It seems to me that my job should be a lot easier than it is. Well, part of it anyway. I don't mean the, first of all, I don't mean the pastoral care part, because we all travel different journeys, and we all find grief and joy. We find challenges. We find opportunities. Our lives are all different. And we travel. It's best if we travel that journey together. And because of that, it's best that we engage each other, we interact, we have relationships that are unique and individual. And that means that's a lot of work. And that's good. That's a good thing. It should be. It should be. I'll tell you what shouldn't be a lot of work. Administration should not be a lot of work in the church. Paperwork should not be a lot of work. Sorry, Linda. But paperwork should not be a lot of work in the church. Maybe that'll change. I have a bad feeling we're going to have more paperwork, but you never know. But I'll tell you what ought to not be so hard. If the story of Jesus is about love and care and how we can best live together and everything, why don't people want to hear it? Like, seriously, if it doesn't matter, to me, it doesn't matter what faith tradition you are or any tradition at all. Don't you think somehow that however you frame it, however you phrase it, things like the Ten Commandments, the Golden Rule, the words of the prophets, Jesus' words, Jesus' idea that we should love each other the way he showed us to love, Paul talking about how we're all part of the same body. Don't you think people should want to hear that? God loves you. Why wouldn't you want to hear that? That ought to be easier. Churches should be full. Hang on. That could be part of the problem. Maybe part of the problem is that people don't want to hear the story because they don't want to hear that. They just don't want to hear that God loves them. They're not interested in loving and caring because what they're interested in is power. We're human beings. We have choices. We can make choices. And power is very tempting. And sometimes maybe we think it's just easier to, if we just had control of things and we could make people do what we want, that would be so much easier. So I don't want to hear your message of how we're all equal. I don't want to hear your message of we should love and care for each other and we should share the bounty of the earth because it's mine. I don't want to hear what you have to say. I'm sure there are people like that. Some of them might be in government. But the thing is, it's not just the people who don't want to hear the message because they don't care where it comes from. They just don't want to hear it. It's also people who don't want to hear the message because they know exactly where it's coming from. And we have some responsibility for that. Because those very temptations around power over people and control of people and all of those things that are very human things, the church is very human too. We're full of human beings. I don't know if you've noticed. But we're full of human beings, and we're susceptible to that too. In fact, we have a lengthy history of being more than susceptible to that. And we actually, even in the present day, find that there are people who call themselves Christians and people who refer to where they go as a church, who don't perhaps behave in a manner in which we think Christians and church people should. FYI, they think the same thing about you. The thing is that there's two issues there, isn't there? One is it's the people who have had an experience of the church, or they think they know what the church is about because of our history. And so they don't want to hear what you have to say because it's coming from the church. And that's fair because that's how they feel about it. That's fair. There's also people who perhaps go to a different church than yours,
who feel differently than you do. And when you express your opinion about that, they write you up, they talk to you and say, no, you're wrong, it's this. In fact, historically, we've gone beyond having conversations and letters, and we've had entire wars over it. And you know those people who are watching because they don't go to church? They're watching that. And that's not helping them hear the message. I had a conversation with somebody the other day that I thought was going very well, and then suddenly it was not. Because somehow, I don't even remember how, but somehow we got onto a conversation about, it was still a conversation I think at that point, about illegal immigrants coming into the US from the South. And I expressed my concern about that because, first of all, refugee is not an illegal immigrant. And you need to determine whether or not, in fact, that's somebody who's an illegal immigrant or a refugee, because there's no such thing as an illegal refugee. A refugee is a refugee. You can't make them illegal. You just can't. So which are they? You have to determine that. And you're not determining that by simply deciding they're all one thing or the other and then treating them accordingly. And furthermore, we could treat them a lot nicer. They are human beings, after all, regardless of what they've done. Even if they are illegal immigrants, they're still human beings. Well, I am mistaken, apparently. Illegal is illegal. They broke the law. They should be treated accordingly. They deserve it, is what I got. Okay, fair enough. Perhaps some of them are illegal. No, they are all illegal, first of all. And secondly, they're all either terrorists or it's human trafficking. Coyotes, I don't know if you've heard this expression as part of this discussion. All of those people trying to get into the US illegally are either terrorists or it's human trafficking. And I said, I don't think that's true. I think that maybe some of them are, I don't know, but I think we should find out before we start treating them all the same. No, illegal is illegal. But they're still human beings. They should be treated with kindness and compassion and love. No, they deserve what they get. It's all those godless lefties that are, whoa. Hang on a sec. And I was like, you know I'm a minister, right? And somebody else who was sitting there was kind of like, and he's a lefty. But that didn't stop anything. What stopped the conversation was, frankly, me pretending to look something up on my phone. But I knew the conversation was done because it was not a conversation anymore. Because this person went on to talk about how something big is coming and they're going to get theirs. And the thing is, let me just say, you're entitled to your belief. You absolutely are. You're entitled to your opinion. You absolutely are. Hate is not an opinion. You are not entitled to it. You simply aren't. We do sometimes. We absolutely do. But you're not entitled to it. Hate is wrong. Sorry. You can't budge me on that. Gee, I sound like the person I was talking about. Hate is not an opinion. Fear isn't an opinion. Exclusivity is not an opinion. It's just wrong. And if you're somebody who says that you follow Jesus, you know it is. Because Jesus was all about love, first of all. Jesus was all about always including people. Jesus was about respect and care and compassion. And remember that the thing most frequently, more than anything else, said by Jesus, don't be afraid. So I want to tell you right now that if you belong to a church whose tradition includes either hate, exclusivity,
or fear, you should think about that. I'm not telling you to go somewhere else, but you should think about that. I am actually suggesting you should go somewhere else, but that's just my opinion. But you should think about that. Because if a pastor stands at the front of your congregation and tells you you should be afraid, and that you should hate people, and we should exclude people, that is not Jesus talking. That's a human being talking. And we are flawed when we think that way. It doesn't mean that there's any of us who don't at some point, because we do. We do. But it's a flaw. And it's not an opinion. It's wrong. Feel free at this point to now say, you're entitled to your opinion. Because yes, I am. And that is mine. There's part of the problem for us in these kind of situations. Is we express our opinion, we hear a counter opinion, and we immediately decide that person's wrong. And we don't want to hear what they have to say. Or we've decided that we think we know who they are. Godless Lefty. Wait, gotta get the right hand. We've decided who they are, so we no longer want to hear what they have to say. That happens too. Why would you even want to listen to me? Because I think this, or because I did that. There's a little bit of what Jesus is running up against in this story, right? He goes, and think about where we are. Just hang on a second and think where we are in the Gospel of Mark, right? The placement of this story is perfect for us. Jesus has been doing stuff. He's been healing people. He's been casting out demons. He's been teaching. He's been doing great stuff. In fact, he's been attracting a crowd. He's become something of a celebrity. In fact, he's become so popular, he needed helpers. So he got 12 people to come along with him and help him. But he's still super busy, right? In fact, over the last few weeks, we've heard about how Jesus was so popular that the huge crowd had driven him to the point where he literally got into a boat to get away from them. And then he crosses to the other side of the lake. But on the way, a storm comes up, and he calms the sea and stills the storm. Or does he still the sea and calm the storm? Whichever one. It's powerful, it's amazing, and the disciples are a little bit scared of him now. Because holy cow, he's not just casting out demons. He's not just healing people. He's not just preaching that we should all love each other and everything. He has power over nature. They don't leave him, of course. They stick with him. But maybe they're a little bit nervous now. They get out of the boat on the other side of the lake, and we get this wonderful story that everybody knows because it has bacon in it, where Jesus casts out the demons that are possessing this man into a bunch of pigs who then spontaneously run into the sea and drown themselves, which does cause the people in that neighborhood to be scared of Jesus and ask him to leave. But still, you got to think that they're going, yeah, we're scared of you, but holy cow, that was cool. Did you see how he did that? That was cool. So he gets in the boat, he goes back to the other side of the lake, where he gets out of the boat and is immediately surrounded by a crowd of people, which includes the leader of the local synagogue, who says, my daughter is ill, can you come and heal her? And off he goes. On the way there in the crowd, someone touches his coat and is healed, and he knows it. So he stops, and he talks to her, and he reminds her that it was her faith that did it, not him. And in the meantime, turns out the other fellow's daughter has died, but Jesus says, don't be afraid. And off they go. And Jesus simply says to her, get up, and she does. Amazing. This Jesus is, not only is he famous and a celebrity, he does super cool stuff. And in the midst of all of that, think of how many times, by the way, that Jesus has to remind people that it's not him that's doing it, it's God. But still, he comes home with his posse and the crowd of people following him. And you'd think he's come home. Yay, people who know me and love me. And he goes to the synagogue and he preaches. And you'd think he'd be and just put yourself in Jesus' shoes for a second. They're huge, but do it anyway. And he's standing there, he's doing his thing, and he's thinking to himself, these people know me. They're going to love what I have to say. This is going to be really good for me because it's going to be really affirming. And what do they say? They say, who do you think you are? We know who you are. You're the carpenter from down the street. You can't possibly know all this stuff. Get out. That's the response he gets. A prophet is never welcome in their hometown, right? And here's a quirky thing that happens in the story. It then says, whichever version you read, whether it says Jesus' miracles or power, deeds of power, however they describe it, he can't do anything in that community. He heals a few people, which you got to think if you're one of those people who was healed, and you're reading this now, you're thinking, excuse me, hello? But he didn't do any of the big stuff, I guess, that made him famous. But he can't do anything. Sorry, it doesn't say that. He says he doesn't. So the question is up to you to answer. Is it that Jesus doesn't do any deeds of power because he can't, because people don't believe? Or is it because he was expecting a different reception, and now he doesn't seem to be able to do any deeds of power because he's kind of feeling like, what's going on? I'm not really feeling good about what's happening here. So is the power still within Jesus and God, or is it related to whether you believe? That's a question for you to answer. How do you hear that? Do you hear it as, it requires me to believe in order for God's love to be alive in the world? Or does it simply require me to believe in myself enough for God's love to be alive in the world? Either way, what happens next is really interesting. Because nothing happens next. He leaves. He simply leaves. And he takes the disciples with him. And he goes on doing what he's been doing. And of course, there's so many people that he says to the disciples, okay, we're gonna divide up in pairs, and you guys go to different places, and you do what I'm doing. Basically, he tells it, yes, I'm going to use that expression that I like to use. He tells them to go and do some Jesusing on his behalf. And off they go. But wait, he says, before they go. Before you go and do the good Jesusing, don't take any stuff with you. Don't take any extra clothes. Don't pack a bag. Don't take any money. Just you, go. And wherever you go, if people welcome you and hear you, stay there until you move on. But if they don't want to hear what you have to say, leave. And as you leave, just as a testament to the fact that they rejected you, dust the dirt off your feet before you, in other words, shake it off and move on. We get this idea, I think, sometimes that everyone wanted to hear what Jesus had to say. Except the bad guys, right? The Pharisees and the Romans. Even some of the Romans and Pharisees wanted to hear, wait, it's getting complicated again. There's part of the problem with the story. It's not as cut and dried as some people would like it to be. It's not so simple. It's not as simple as they're all illegal, treat them all the same way. And by the way, they deserve it. It's not that simple. It's way more complicated than that. The message of Jesus is not that simple either. Because the message of Jesus hinges on you developing a relationship with people and how that relationship lives. And everybody's different.